It all started with a breath. Celestial bodies, distant and foreign, fill your eyes as you awaken, framed by the comforting familiarity of pine trees and the glow of a campfire. From the first frame of Outer Wilds, you are ensnared in mystery, wonder, and maybe just the slightest hint of fear. The possibilities are endless, the scope of discovery enormous, unknowing of the trials and tribulations that lie ahead. Or perhaps you do know, because this moment, gazing up at the night sky on a foreign planet, will become all too familiar. I've been sitting here with a blank script for days now, and I'm staring down a series of voice message notes about how to approach this video, but I cannot find the words that I think will do this justice. People have been making videos and essays praising Outer Wilds for years now, and honestly, for the first time, I'm diving into territory with this video that I fear may not be original, may not offer anything new to the table. This is not the first time I've been intimidated by the sheer scale of a video, but it certainly is the first time I've been intimidated by the saturation of it, forcing me to compare myself to others, worrying how I might stack up in the grand scheme of things and whether or not I, as a small YouTube video maker, am going to matter in this vast ocean of videos talking about this masterpiece of a game. How do I even approach this game? What sort of presentation do I give this? What kind of narrative can be written that hasn't already been done? Well, I'm not entirely sure. I guess all we can do is our best, and no matter the outcome, I will still be, and the universe will. It's a wilderness out there. When I play a video game, I'm not looking for much. Despite my weird and contradictory standards when it comes to games, I'm not really that hard to please. Story? Sure, don't need one, but if it has one, keep it engaging and interesting. Gameplay functionality? This one probably holds the most weight, as no one wants to play a broken or limited game. But this also introduces a sliding scale. What constitutes a broken game is charming, or a game with limited functionality is enjoyable. While on one end you have examples like the tank controls on Bubsy 3D, which sure was a decision. But then you have games like Rollaway and Five Nights at Freddy's, which offer extremely limited gameplay but pay it back with how they use that limited functionality. Replayability? Obviously not every game is going to be replayable, because once you've spoilt the solution to a problem for yourself, the game is going to lose a little replay value. Immersion? I mean, it's certainly important to be able to immerse myself into a game, but sometimes a heavily immersive experience can be a turnoff to someone like me who keeps a relatively busy schedule. This is specifically why I've put off Path of Exile, by the way. Let me cut to the chase here. It's been going on 3 months upon writing this script, likely nearing 4 when this video inevitably goes up, since I've completed the base game for Outer Wilds and, while sure, it doesn't have the 20 years of history that I have with games like Black and White and Diablo 2, Black and White, I've been pretty blunt in saying that it's my favorite game of all time. But Outer Wilds is something special, as it's the first time I've ever really been compelled by a game this deeply, impacted this substantially, that it leads me to ask questions about whether or not it stacks up with those games. A game so profoundly meaningful to me that it literally retcons 2 of the video essays on this channel. This is your last chance to click away before we begin our expedition and spoil everything. For the record, there will be no DLC spoilers in this video if you've played the base game but you're still simmering on echoes. But if you've ever heard anyone talk about Outer Wilds, you've probably noted that the #1 rule about Outer Wilds is that we do not talk about Outer Wilds. You are simply told, play this game without looking anything up about it. Thankfully I wasn't preached this non-stop, because my turnaround time from I should play that to actually playing it was, I don't know, 4 days. I simply found a Ferroti comic on Blue Sky and was like, I could use a good emotional gut punch, let's play it. And avoided all but one early game spoiler looking up a synopsis of the game. Yes, it is that kind of game. Everything about it, the story, the lore, the mechanics, the gameplay functions, even a brief synopsis, are all spoilers for it. All I can tell you before you inevitably need to click away if you have not played this game is this. It's a space game. And always go too far, because that is where you'll find the truth. Outer Wilds, quite literally, is a 2012 master's thesis which developed later into a 2019 adventure mystery space thriller. You know what? Let's back up a bit. We ain't doing this. Get that shit out of here. It ain't gonna work like this. Instead of tell you about the game, we'll do this like a tour. And if y'all bear with me for a bit and hear me out, I'd hope that I help you understand exactly how Outer Wilds changed my perspective on life and cured my hypochondria. That's not even clickbait. And by the way, quick plug, since I don't have a good way to flow it into the outro with how the script turned out, Patreon and membership link is in the description to see my videos a couple days before everyone else. And if you can't swing them monthly, you can tip for the work I put into this video in the description as well. And if I've kept your attention thus far, I presume I've done something at least worth a comment and a subscription at the very least. Alright, with that said, let's begin our expedition. You begin at a campfire. You are an inhabitant of the planet known as Timber Hearth. You can roast as many perfectly toasted marshmallows as you wish. By the way, yeah, unlimited supply of marshmallows. Cool perk about this game.
Why eat some other stuff when you can eat fluffy puff marshmallows?
You learn immediately that you are the newest recruit for your settlement's fledgling space program, Outer Wilds Ventures. You were told that you should go to the observatory to gather the launch codes from a fellow scientist named Hornfels so you can begin your expedition. As you walk through the peaceful and tranquil familiarity of your settlement in search of the observatory, you are given little pieces of information and are presented with optional minigames strewn throughout your little hamlet to help you get acquainted with the controls. Feldspar was the first Hearthian to be intentionally launched into space. They completed the first orbit around Timber. You quite quickly recognize that you will not be here long. And as you enter the observatory and read the information, you should also recognize that spaceflight in your race is in its infancy. But a lot of the information here, as limited as it is, will foreshadow what's to come, and that your general job is to study an extinct species called the Nomai, an advanced race that settled in your solar system a long time ago. But your settlement does not know why they came here or why they all died, so it's up to you to hopefully find this out. Your equipment? A state-of-the-art translator to translate Nomaian texts, a signal scope to pick up different audio frequencies from throughout the cosmos, a scout which you can launch and take photos of things from a distance, a spacesuit with about the tailoring expertise as the Rags armor in Diablo 1, and a spaceship that would make Sandy the Seal cry.
From now on, all of our submarines will be egg-shaped!
Anyways, as you talk to Hornfels and Hal, you begin to realize that, while it's your mission to get up there, once you're up there, it's your call. You are free to roam the solar system, make discoveries, go to new planets, discover old civilizations untouched for millennia. You are the captain of this mission. And apart from your time paradox of a ship log, there is ultimately no mission guide. You versus the unforgiving nature of the universe. Space is terrifying. What fascinated me as a kid has haunted my dreams as an adult. The idea that there is an infinity out there, right now, decorated with the occasional balls of searing gas hotter than our sun, landscapes likely teeming with life that will never be seen in our lifetimes, completely absent the awareness of our existence. We are. But what are we in the grand scheme? Our existence is minuscule in this endless ocean of space. The scale is incomprehensible. Even our nearest cosmic neighbor, the Alpha Centauri system, sits tantalizingly close, but even it seems far beyond our reach. As with even our most advanced current technology, barring any theoretical projects such as Breakthrough Starshot, the journey there to see it for ourselves would take thousands of years. And by then, we will most certainly have either advanced to have already seen it or destroyed ourselves trying. The thought that we are endlessly sitting on a giant ball moving 67,000 miles an hour around another giant ball of flaming plasma and hydrogen that has been burning at 27 million degrees Fahrenheit for billions of years, that scares me. My frame of reference is that of human creations, things that we as a species build and destroy. Those things wear and tear over time, right? So certainly all of this has to die eventually too, right? Doesn't the fuel just run out at some point? Hey, you guys want to know one of my biggest fears? Earth suddenly being pulled into Jupiter's orbit for some reason, and we keep getting closer and closer until we pierce through that nope layer of danger clouds never to be seen again. If it's not obvious, or if you haven't read the title of this video for some reason, I'm a hypochondriac. Let me show you what that means. Oh, my arm's itchy.
I'm gonna fucking die.
And yeah, jokes aside, it's normal to have a healthy fear of death or of dying. Like, say you're falling off of a fucking skyscraper. I'd be a little concerned if you were appreciating the flock of birds that just flew by in that moment. But hypochondria, or at least the kind I have, is basically, oh no, I remember that time I licked silica gel 20 years ago. Guess I should probably write my will, huh? Yeah, hypochondria is when it's invasive, and at times this shit gets quite debilitating. I have trouble watching some space videos, because they can be a bit overwhelming at times. You know, Hornfels' observations are poignantly accurate now that I think about them. Anyways, let's do it. Throw caution to the wind and go to space. Let's get to our spaceship. What in the cinnamon toast fuck was that? But anyways, whatever. Off we go. Bam. Launch codes entered. Delivery DiGiorno. Hotel Trivago. Wolf maned. Weasels long. So let's suit up and get this baby off our globe. Alright. Whew. We launched. Wow. And nobody was killed. Anyways, where are we going? Okay, let's take this all in. We've got 5 planets, a few satellites flying around them, and an asteroid. I guess we just gotta pick one. There! The one with definitely no horrifying black hole at the center. Let's land on that one. Almost. Almost. Got it! We did it! We landed on our first space voyage without tearing anything up. Man, I'm so excited to start exploring. Time to unbuckle, take my spacesuit off, and embark on my first real space adventure. Oh shit, I took my spacesuit off. Oops. Let me go ahead and make this abundantly clear. I have the reading comprehension skills of a 3rd grader, the cleverness of a granola bar, and the attention span of dryer lint. Oh, I have a jetpack booster I could have used the whole time. Sure, I may be able to learn and perform functions within the game, but things that aren't spelled out to me right away might be a little slower to come to me. Apparently most people can reach the ending of this game within just a couple of playthroughs spanning maybe 15 to 20 hours. My playthrough? 37 hours over the course of 9 streams. The immersion with Outer Wilds comes in the mystery of what the fuck is going on here. Exhibit A. I unfortunately did have this mechanic spoiled for me, the time loop. This and another major spoiler were featured in the Switch trailer for this game, but thankfully I was told not to watch that trailer. You want to know how long it took for that second mechanic to finally dawn on me? It was on the second stream. Over 6 hours into my playthrough. Wait a minute. It's a red giant. The sun is dying. So there you have it, the base premise of Outer Wilds. I will tell you that if you had any of these mechanics spoiled for you, you missed out on that discovery. Because I can tell you, when I found out that the sun was going red giant into a supernova, I swear, I felt like a prospector who just struck gold. It was so good. You are a new astronaut on your first voyage, going to study an ancient dead race, and it just so happens that the sun is dying and now everything's coming up Majora's Mask and you don't know why. And here's where we have an important fundamental of gaming to make me really immersed in a game. Keep me asking questions. What the heck? How the fuck close are we to the sun? Where was I supposed to go? Alright, where am I currently heading? How do I land? What is that? Where else am I able to go from here? Is the sun getting bigger? Ooh, what's that? Ooh, what's that? Ooh, what's that? So let's answer some basic questions here. Where can you go in this game? There are 5 planets and 1 comet that orbits your sun. Let's explore them. The Hourglass Twins, a pair of binary planets, Ember Twin and Ash Twin. Ash Twin is made entirely out of sand, which fills Ember Twin over time, which, as you might predict, makes for some time-sensitive and time-locked things to discover. If you point your signal scope at it, you'll notice a drum line being played, which you learn from Nice on your home planet of Timber Hearth belongs to another space cadet named Chert. You may also notice another strange signal being picked up if you've discovered quantum fluctuations or distress beacon. Timber Hearth is your home planet orbited by a moon called the Attle Rock. You'll hear whistling coming from the Attle Rock, indicating Esker's location, Esker being one of the founders of Outer Wilds Ventures. While traversing your home world, you may even pick up some weird sounds on your signal scope that you don't expect, or perhaps find other secrets within. Brittle Hollow is a fascinating yet frustrating lore dump of a planet with a black hole for a core that is home to a volcanic moon named Hollow's Lantern. The outside might look mundane at first glance, but what lies beneath the surface is worth the repeated trips and repeated falls. Hollow's Lantern may appear non-viable, but it's another time-locked area whose limited secrets reveal themselves with time. Your signal scope will pick up a banjo sound here, which if you've talked to Nice on your homeworld, you would determine that this is an instrument known to be played by Rybeck, another space cadet. Giant's Deep is a water giant covered in a thick layer of clouds and constantly enduring turbulent weather. And just to trigger your thalassophobia, you can see the planet's core while stranded in the water. Tornadoes also appear on the surface, which can suck you right into orbit, and the North Pole is surrounded by a giant, stationary, impassable cyclone. This cyclone isn't exactly difficult to pass with good ship control or the knowledge of how to pass under this swift water current that surrounds the planet's core. Giant's Deep has 5 islands, each of them worth exploring, one of them signaling another space cadet named Gabbro's clarinet on your signal scope. And finally, Dark Bramble is an evil world of hate and die. Don't go here unless you enjoy browning your britches. However, this place contains crucial story lore and exposition, and it just so happens to be sending a harmonica signal as indicated on your signal scope, to which Nice says is Feldspar's instrument of choice. Feldspar being a Hearthian cadet who has been missing for quite some time. This is probably one of those moments that makes you raise an eyebrow early on in the game. The Interloper is a comet of ice and rock which orbits the sun in a wide ellipse, spanning out past Dark Bramble's distant orbit all the way to rendezvous very close to the sun and contains, well, trust me, what lies beneath is worth the trip. Don't skip this one. There's a mysterious moon in this system as well. It took me a while to actually figure this out, but if you look away from it, it vanishes, only to reappear at another celestial body. It also picks up quantum fluctuation signal on your signal scope if you've learned that radio frequency. It is dubbed the Quantum Moon. And finally, let's talk about the sun. It is hot. If you get too close, it'll pull you in. And over time throughout your time loop, so, like 20 minutes or so, because suns are known to expand that quickly, of course, you will watch in horror as the sun grows in size into a red giant before finally collapsing in on itself and exploding in a vast and beautiful supernova, easily the most gorgeous way to die in this game. This is, again, the mechanic of the game that took me 7 hours to figure out. The next aspect of the game we need to cover are the individual explorers. Of course, I mentioned them previously, but because they're all equally fascinating and you might find yourself relating with some of them quite a bit, actually. They're great characters. There's, of course, you, but you are far from the first and only explorer within the Outer Wilds Ventures. As mentioned before, each traveler has their own instrument that they're skilled in, all of which can be heard using your signal scope right from the start. My brain is, of course, made of marble, so I didn't recognize right away that the song they're all playing is the same one as the title screen, and they're all playing one part of the same song. But don't worry, even if you don't recognize this right away, you'll eventually figure it out. We'll get to that later. Esker, one of the first Hearthian astronauts. Back at the birth of Outer Wilds Ventures some nondescript amount of time ago, equipment would often need repairs, so Esker was in charge of the lunar outpost in order to make these repairs. Nowadays, Esker is left by their lonesome on the Attle Rock, just keeping an eye on things, sometimes even shooting your scout at the village to see how everyone's doing. Friggin' stalker, what a weirdo. Just kidding, Esker, I love you. Rybeck is another Hearthian astronaut and archaeologist who is a little more timid and tentative when it comes to space, and they're a little clumsy at that, but have a deep passion for discovering more about the Nomai. You can find them in Brittle Hollow playing their banjo. They talk to you about their near miss that resulted in them setting up camp here, and they're one of the few Hearthian explorers you can actually tell pretty much anything about the Nomai that you discover to. A traveler whose instrument you will recognize quickly is Feldspar's harmonica. Feldspar, however, is in the dimension-defying terror realm of Dark Bramble. Alright, I guess we'll talk about Dark Bramble. So, Dark Bramble used to be an ice world, but has been overtaken by a seemingly supernatural growth of densely packed bramble. The bramble can be found in other celestial beings as well, such as your home of Timber Hearth. where you will also pick up Feldspar's harmonica. Shooting your scout inside of the bramble seed on Timber Hearth will reveal a massive expanse of fog, and your scout will eventually land on what looks like a giant fossil with a campsite in its mouth. Holy shit. Now, instinctually, as I myself did, you might want to go here next, to which I say, that's a great idea! You should definitely do that! These fuckers are the bane of my existence. If you go and explore the Sunless City on Ember Twin, you might encounter some food for thought about getting around these guys, but it did take me a while to figure it out. But to find Feldspar, simple stealth will do just fine. Feldspar is described as fearless, which can be perceived as a bit reckless. Feldspar is an explorer who is keen on discovering new things, daring, and being such a celebrated figure on their homeworld that they decided to stay in their camp, claiming they need a break from being the best that ever was. From them you can learn how to reach the core of Giant's Deep using a jellyfish as a tool for installation against the high voltage field. Gabbro is identified by their somber clarinet playing from Giant's Deep. Gabbro is probably one of the more interesting of the travelers. No, not because they're any better or worse written or developed than the other travelers, but because they have something very specific in common with you. I'll save that for later. But you learn pretty quick that Gabbro is the equivalent of naming Link my dude in Ocarina of Time, and they've probably been singing Hakuna Matata a few too many times. Absolutely not a care in the world, and I absolutely love them for it. Gabbro, like Feldspar, can also teach you something useful, the ability to meditate to the next loop. On the other paw, Chert is probably my favorite Hearthian character in Outer Wilds, bar none. Chert, tasked with updating the star charts, can be found on Ember Twin playing their drums, and will give you a different set of dialogues based on when you encounter them. If the sun is nearing its red giant phase, Chert seems to collapse into hysteria, cursing the fact that all their work might be all for naught, as they're one of the very few to recognize the signs of the heat death of the universe coming far earlier than expected, noticing supernovae left and right. Chert eventually asks you to sit with them and await the inevitable. In terms of existentialism, I'm quite sure that Gabbro is an allegory for optimistic nihilism and Chert is an allegory for pessimistic nihilism. I do believe this was fully intentional, and now this might start making sense to you. Chert is panicked over the idea of losing everything they strive to be, everything they've worked for. They've thrown all caution to the wind and broken down in hysteria, realizing their entire life's work is pointless. In the grand scheme of things, it's pointless. This is where I was with that fear, with the certainty that one day, I don't know where and I don't know when, I will die. I will succumb to the nature of the universe that we live in. While many run to faith and others accept the void, for the last half decade or so, I've been skeptical of faith and scared of eternal nothingness. In 2018, as stated in a previous video, I started having panic attacks from whatever mental health ailments had been left unchecked for so long, and this overall has led me to practicing much higher levels of discretion. It wasn't until 2024 I recognized my triggers, but regardless of cause, all these panic attacks had one thing in common: nothing matters. You don't matter, so why bother? Your only perception of reality is your own experience. You will never see or feel another's experience in this world. Your own perception is therefore void in the grand scheme of things. You're eternally alone except for your own perceptions. In a reality where only your own perceptions exist to your own experience, how do you even know that reality is real? Strap in, things are about to get wild, science-y, and a bit existential. Your mission, as a new Hearthian explorer, and as stated earlier, is to explore the solar system and study an ancient people that inhabited it, the Nomai. This is all in-game lore that's drip-fed to you, piece by piece as you explore. I'm going to assume that most people who have watched this far have already played this game, so let's reiterate their story. I'm not good with names here, so bear with me, I'll be referring to just a few of them. But the Nomai are a race of beings who travel to your solar system guided by their curiosity around a signal they'd received, which was determined to be older than the universe itself. How could something be older than the universe? The source of the signal became almost like a deity to the Nomai, beckoning them to our solar system. So the clan leader named Ascal orders his crew to warp their ship, called the Vessel, to the signal. But the signal had actually bounced off of Dark Bramble, and just like how Feldspar's harmonica or your scout can be seen in multiple places at once within the bramble, they follow the signal and wind up entangled deep within Dark Bramble. The ship damaged and oxygen depleting, the crew rushes to the escape pods and attempts to escape. Escape Pod 4 is unable to escape the branches and succumbs. Escape Pod 3 lands somewhere deep in a different area of the bramble, which you encounter likely by following the distress beacon's signal to it. Escal is a part of this group in Escape Pod 3 and attempts to lead the group back to safety. The vessel's signal, however, is duplicated by the Dark Bramble's many dimensions, leading to them following the signal emitted by a seed that is too small for anyone to fit through. They all died presumably to the depletion of their oxygen supply. Escape Pods 1 and 2 managed to break free of the bramble and crash-landed on 2 separate planets, Ember Twin and Brittle Hollow. Those on Brittle Hollow quickly found themselves in a vulnerable position building on the planet's surface, as the volcanic moon would spit fireballs at them on occasion, destroying anything they'd managed to erect. But discovering that Brittle Hollow's crust had gravitational anomalies, they were able to craft gravity stones, and thereby traverse the underside of the planet's crust, constructing a vertical city dubbed the Hanging City, underneath the surface that could harness the power of the black hole at the planet's core. With the power of a black hole at their disposal, the Nomai were able to construct a less advanced version of a warp core, which was used to power the vessel. Using the gravity stones as well as a newly designed warp core, they are able to invent a new space shuttle and a gravity cannon to launch it with. With this new technology, the crew of Pods 1 and 2 are able to reunite. The crew of the other escape pod, which had crash-landed on Ember Twin, find themselves with the harrowing task of creating a city deep within Ember Twin's cave system, the Sunless City. In the Sunless City, you come to know a long-dead Nomaian named Solanum. You learn that this Nomaian was skeptical of the Eye of the Universe, as it led so many of her people to their death, and that maybe this Eye of the Universe doesn't want to be found, and this was its way of telling them that. The Eye of the Universe was the name that the Nomai gave to the signal that was deemed to be older than the universe itself. In the School of Brittle Hollow, the same Nomaian can be seen in many texts questioning the Eye of the Universe and whether or not the Eye is malicious. She entertains the idea that the Eye may not have wishes, it might just be, and it has no deep meaning, and perhaps no meaning is not so bad after all. You begin to learn in this particular Nomai's quantum pilgrimage, her first voyage to the quantum moon. The Nomai, clans back within communication, and still dead set on finding the source of the signal despite the setback, start to become enthralled by a mysterious moon that disappears when no one is looking, exhibiting properties of quantum mechanics. They seek to land on this mysterious moon, which seems to refuse to let them land on it before vanishing. That's the quantum moon. Oh shit! He's right. If you look away from it, they began their work to develop ways to track this moon, erecting a quantum moon locator on the south pole of the Ember Twin. Before long, the Nomai recognized the vertical construction of the city on Brittle Hollow has a problem. So the Nomai build a warp station to warp back to Brittle Hollow with the resulting white hole. Wait up, white hole? Yeah, the Nomai essentially invented warp travel by being able to link up black holes with a resulting white hole. This technology, in fact, became quite paramount to them, what with the development of warp cores as essentially power banks for a lot of their inventions. I don't fully understand the science behind it because my brain is full of spaghetti, but yeah, warp travel. They fall in the hole, they come out the other end. So they built a station to warp back easily from the other end. As their efforts continued, a group of Nomai with the names Pi, Poke, and Clary recognized a strange anomaly. When Nomai would arrive at the White Hole station from Brittle Hollow, they were arriving milliseconds before they'd actually entered the black hole at the center of Brittle Hollow. They sought to check the accuracy of these readings, and what they found left them baffled, so much so that they had to move their studies to a laboratory that could handle such a task, the High Energy Lab in the Sunless City of Ember Twin. The Nomai gathered as much power as possible from the Sunless City to replicate the time anomaly to make it visible to the naked eye. With this, the Nomai, without the vessel or any of their legacy technology at hand, had just discovered time travel. In the meantime, the Nomai make another amazing discovery that would change everything. The quantum moon, the disappearing moon I mentioned earlier, is determined by its quantum characteristics to be the Eye of the Universe's moon, which concludes to the Nomai that the eye must be in a very distant orbit of this very solar system. Multiple different efforts to locate the Eye of the Universe were constructed with this knowledge, including a laboratory at Brittle Hollow's South Pole, and eventually, with the discovery of time travel, a new gravity cannon and a probe to send out to look for the Eye of the Universe. This probe is imperative to their search and to your story, and it is the first thing you see when you open your eyes. Work began on the Nomai's greatest scientific project yet, the Ash Twin Project, located at the core of the Ash Twin, surrounded by warp towers to each celestial body in the solar system, with the exception of Dark Bramble, because nobody likes Dark Bramble. Part of this project included crafting stones on Giant's Deep, where these statues were designed to store memory and data. The Ash Twin Project was encased within the core using a dense material mined from Timber Hearth to protect it from the impending supernova that they themselves would create. Wait. The Nomai tried to blow up the sun? Yep, they built a sun station, which would theoretically prompt the sun to explode and thereby generate the power the Ash Twin Project needed to power the memory statues. A memory statue is paired with the orbital probe cannon, allowing the cannon to fire endlessly in a time loop until it locates the Eye of the Universe. The Ash Twin Project, in theory, should activate when the Eye of the Universe is found, alerting the Nomai of the discovery using the statues. The only thing that can generate enough energy to power this is a supernova. Okay, so this is a lot. So we have a cannon around Giant's Deep that shoots a probe into space in a random direction, a sun station that can prompt the sun to explode, and some sort of memory thing at the core of Ash Twin, and now at the same time, your sun is going supernova and you're caught in a time loop for some reason. What do these all have to do with each other? We'll get to that in just a second, but first, what happened to the Nomai? They seemed like they were so close to getting what they were after. Where did their story end? The sun station was unfortunately a failure. They were not deterred as they were sure they could prompt a supernova, but at the failure of the sun station came the thrill of seeing a new celestial body. Pi, Poke, and Clary boarded a ship and landed on a brand new comet in the solar system called the Interloper. Clary stays behind to ensure the shuttle doesn't freeze, while Pi and Poke make their way into a fissure and explore beneath the surface, as they had been picking up a strange reading from inside of it. As they near the core of the Interloper, they give Clary a heads up that they may lose contact as they draw nearer the signal. They find a crevice and reach the core of the comet, which contains a spherical stone casing that appears to be an undiscovered and highly volatile type of matter under tons of pressure. And the pressure is increasing as the comet nears the sun for the first time. The Nomai realize the harrowing situation. Their entire clan is in immediate danger. Poke runs to warn the others, but it's too late. Only moments after Poke departs, the core ruptures, and every Nomai falls victim to it across the entire solar system. Only aquatic beings manage to survive. All except one Nomai. Who are you? This is where Outer Wilds grips the player. There are so many moments you just don't expect. As you begin to solve this mystery that feels larger than life, being drip-fed little pieces of info, little texts, little bits of lore, you are then rewarded for solving the quantum puzzles with this magical moment. All of your exploration, all of your hours of strife, of death, of looping back to the start. This is the first time you truly discover something heart-stopping. A living being of the very people you sought out to study. This is Solanum. Solanum became entangled with the quantum moon, and while her species was annihilated by the ghost matter, she was spared. Well, 1/6 of her at least. Being entangled with a quantum body, this moon exists in 6 locations at once. The orbit of the Eye of the Universe being the only thing far away enough to withstand the core's rupture. You can communicate with Solanum through these symbol stones, but unfortunately and unsatisfyingly, you are unable to tell her about your journey, about the fate of her people, or ask her any questions about specifics such as the Ash Twin Project or the vessel. So let's rewind a bit. We have a sun station that was designed to create a supernova but failed. The supernova, by design, would power the Ash Twin project, which would then send a probe launch order and all probe data back in time by 22 minutes. This order would make the orbital probe cannon launch a probe in a random direction. 22 minutes later, the sun station would again trigger a supernova to repeat the cycle. This would repeat until the eye of the universe was eventually found by random chance, which, when successful, would power the masks to alert the Nomai. This knowledge of the eye's discovery would in turn allow the Nomai to be able to shut down the Ash Twin project before they kaboom the sun for real. Space-time logic is weird, y'all. I'm doing my best explaining this. But yeah, in addition to this funky but very important code you get at the core of Giant's Deep, you also learned that this requires something to the tune of 9.318 million probe launches or something like that. So this was all theoretically sound. All they were missing was a supernova. Almost 281,000 years later, after the surviving aquatic species on Timber Hearth had evolved into a small tribe of blue, four-eyed, two-legged creatures, a supernova happens on the sun's natural timeline. The probe begins to launch, the time loops begin, and the events that the Nomai had set into action begin to play out. 9.318 million multiverses all experiencing the exact same thing. Each one where the only difference is the probe firing in a different direction. Each one where the probe has a varying amount of data on board regarding location and angle, enough 22-minute loops to occupy nearly 400 years. This is the one you wake up to. You start your day as normal, just as you do on the other 9.318 million loops. But this time something is different. In this timeline, the statue in the observatory looks at you. The eye has been found by the probe, and the statue is alerting you, the unintended recipient of the alert. But given that you literally have no idea what's going on, you might need to take a few loops, or a few hundred, to figure it out. You aren't alone though, as when you look at an Ash Twin projection pool, which is a means of communicating and projecting to an area you aren't at, you notice that there aren't one, not two, but three masks illuminated. For sake of brevity, the third mask is linked to that orbital probe can that's been firing into the abyss like it's December 1st. But the second mask, however? Have you died recently, or is it just me? No, it's me too. We're in a time loop. Time has been behaving unusually lately. Yeah, a time loop makes sense. Remember how I said Gabbro teaches you how to meditate? Turns out they've also been looping this whole time as well, as the statue looked at them in likely the same 22-minute time frame yours did. So you aren't exactly alone with this. And yeah, they simply reset their loop by meditating, so they teach you how to reset your loop by meditating if you talk to them on two separate loops. Anyways, let's finish this story off. So your adventure will eventually take you to the vessel, which, if you explore, you will find some sort of interface that can accept code inputs. Memorizing that code from the core of Giant's Deep should work, but you'll eventually recognize that the vessel's warp core is busted and therefore cannot warp you. Where to find a new and powerful warp core? This is where your process of elimination and likely scouring and rereading of your ship's log would, in most cases, take you to the Ash Twin project. On most playthroughs, this is generally the last place one would explore. So we got the coordinates, let's just go down there and see if we can find a warp core to take us to the eye. Let's see what they were after all this time anyway. You're about to access the core while the Ash Twin project is active. Removing the core will disable the Ash Twin project. Oh. A more clever individual would naturally recognize this as a moment where everything changes. You may want to put it back, or meditate, or force a death here to reset your loop. I, as you may have guessed, and as I have indicated throughout this video, have the brain of a bowling screen when you get a gutter ball. So I didn't recognize at first that I was still on the same 22-minute timer before the inevitable heat death of the universe. Oh wait, am I on a time limit? Am I on a time limit here? Grabbing this core didn't stop the inevitable. So our sun is dying. oh yeah, now I know what's going on. Now I know what's causing me to die, but I still don't understand the time loop. And now I'm trying to figure that out. Yeah, like, what can be, is there anything that we can do? Do we have the technology to save that? It's not your responsibility. It never was, never is, and never will be your responsibility to save the universe. The stakes may have just increased because at this point you certainly recognize that you have likely not died during your playthrough, because death was not enabled by the very technology you sought to study in the first place. This is game design genius, of course, but demands more than just a passing glance, because there's so much more to be said here. From a philosophical standpoint, and from the standpoint of a hypochondriac, I've analyzed and narrated my intense and intrusive fear of death. The thought of getting a shot in the doctor's office and the idea of that vaccine now swimming throughout my body makes my skin crawl. Attention drawn to my heart pounding in my chest gives me the compulsive fear that it might stop at any second. I've woken up hyperventilating from night terrors thinking that it very well has, but this has gone on since I was a teen, asking my mother every night if she was going to die tonight, checking my father in the morning to make sure he was still breathing, worrying about whether or not I've inhaled an allergen or whether or not I've eaten something toxic, and later in life having panic attacks from all the unchecked anxiety, all the worry and the fear culminating in a whirlwind in my head. And in the middle of these attacks, you just keep thinking, how could it possibly get worse? How could I possibly be more scared? And it sucks. It fucking sucks to go through this. Calling the 988 help hotline to get some assistance getting out of it. Trying to admit myself to a mental hospital 3 times before finally getting a med that helped. And when you're in the moment, all you can do is think that I know I'm better than this, I know I'm stronger than this, and that everything you're thinking, it's not real, it's all in my head. My life matters. But all of this fear of the abyss of existence, or of non-existence after we die.
It's different being afraid that you won't make it back home, and then knowing that you won't.
Your destiny was, if you ever intended to break free of the time loop and reach this ending to your voyage, is to live as the Nomai did. They never let their fear stop them. Their craftiness, ingenuity, and adaptability under pressure led them to the precipice of the universe's greatest treasure. Their history became your destiny. Outer Wilds Ventures was founded by Feldspar, Gassan, Slate, and Hornfels to explore a solar system at the end of the universe. The Nome never got to see it for themselves, but thanks to their efforts and technology, a Hearthian was able to reach the eye of the universe. But what I felt in this moment was pure terror. What have I done? I fused with a singularity where mathematical and scientific principle ends and philosophy begins. I've referenced Sunshine more than a time or two here, and while it is one of my favorite movies of all time, it is in my headcanon that this game borrowed a lot of inspiration from that movie. And in this moment, I was what Pinbacker envisioned. One man, alone with God. The universe is ending. Everything you know and loved, the travelers, the planets, the discoveries, the memories, the history, gone. What was the purpose of it all? Was there even a purpose? All that's left is you, and you are the only thing left in the universe. What does that make you? Like I said, this is some trippy shit, because you don't go into wormholes in space. Because everything starts coming up 2001 Space Odyssey. You may notice after a few frightful run-ins and one of the most odd encounters you may ever experience in this game, that you are sitting by a campfire. That campfire came from basically a clone of you, endlessly roasting marshmallows, synonymous with the title screen. You are alone at the campfire, truly and heartbreakingly alone. What was it all for? You may feel purposeless. You may feel directionless. You may not feel that you make an impact. By choosing to shut off your time loop to finish what the Nomai started, you've chosen your purpose. Your purpose was kindness. You are enough. And the true beauty, your true purpose, were quite literally the friends you made along the way. Outer Wilds is something special, because I was able to give myself up to the benign indifference of this virtually generated world. For the first time in a video game, the playable character is not the main character. The main character is the universe. This game hits on the same notes as Everything Everywhere All at Once, but unlike that movie, which I think forces a little too much suspension of disbelief and is maybe a tad too absurd for my liking, this game is far more subtle. You don't know where, you don't know when, but you have your words and you have your friends. It's not your responsibility to save the universe, because what matters now is what you can control, your destiny, here and now. A new universe born of friendship and kindness, music, and a campfire. The bonds that surely create a beautiful place. You did this with the tools you had from the very start, learning from every crevice of the solar system new pieces of information to help you find this moment. With ingenuity, craftiness, and the desire to know of both your own tribe as well as the Nomai. You, a Hearthian, were so deeply impacted by the work of a race that's been dead for generations that you sought out, at the heat death of the universe, to complete their greatest work for no purpose other than knowing. If I can make my work, my videos in this grand ocean of videos, that loud and far-reaching, I'd consider myself sated with my place in this universe. And if I don't, I will still live and create loud enough that the very act itself is rebellion. Because there are, like me, sick people who need healing. And maybe, just like Outer Wilds was the thing that stared my hypochondria dead in the eyes and challenged it with the logical conclusion that the universe, that our existence, is simply so absurd that it has to be cherished. Maybe someone else, now or far, far in the future, will find something in this world I create, be it this video or something else, that maybe they'll find their own epiphany. Because no matter the outcome, I will still be, and the universe will. It's a wilderness out there.